You know, something peculiar happens when a person awakens, truly awakens. Not the poetic awakening we read about in books, not the inspirational kind people post on social media, but the quiet, unsettling moment when the world you once lived in begins to feel strangely distant, almost unfamiliar, as if you stepped out of a dream and realized everyone else was still asleep. And for a time, you might try to re-enter that dream, to slip back into the familiar rhythms of conversation, of laughter, of belonging. But something inside you hesitates. Something deep and ancient whispers, be careful. Because after awakening, the world does not simply look different, people do. Not in a judgmental way, not in a superior way, but in an unmistakably clear way, the way sunlight exposes dust floating in the air that you never noticed before. You begin to see patterns, motives, wounds, fears, subtle things that once blended into the background. And this clarity comes with both a gift and a warning. Not everyone can walk with you after you wake up. Not everyone should. There are 5 kinds of people who, without meaning to, can pull you back into the dream you just fought so hard to leave. People who drain your clarity, disrupt your inner balance, confuse your sense of self, and entangle you again in unconscious cycles you've already begun to outgrow. And the very first danger is that many of them won't look dangerous. Some will appear kind, loving, familiar. Some will even believe they're helping you. Others you've known for years. But awakening sharpens perception, and perception reveals truth. Before I name these 5 people, you must understand why awakening creates separation in the first place. Imagine you've been sitting in a dimly lit room your entire life. The light was soft, warm, comforting. You didn't notice the shadows because you didn't know anything else existed. Then one day, someone pulls back the curtains and sunlight floods the room. Suddenly you see everything. The dust, the cracks in the wall, the faded colors. You see clearly, painfully clearly. And when you try to show others, they squint, they turn away. They insist the dimness is better, more comfortable. They're not wrong. They're not bad. They're simply not ready. This is the first quiet tragedy of awakening. You begin to perceive the distance between you and others long before they ever notice it themselves. And now, the first person you must avoid is the one who fears your transformation. This person doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes the fear is subtle, wrapped in concern, disguised as love. You've changed, they say. What happened to you? But their tone isn't curious. It's anxious. Because your awakening threatens the stability of the world they've built around you. They like the old you, the predictable you, the agreeable you, the version of you that didn't ask inconvenient questions or shine too brightly. Their fear is not of your awakening. It is of what your awakening demands of them. To stay asleep while someone beside them wakes up is unbearable. It forces them to confront the very thing they have spent years avoiding, themselves. The second person you must avoid is the one who feeds on your energy. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but because they have not learned to generate their own. You'll recognize them by how you feel around them. You enter a room feeling calm, centered, and leave feeling scattered, drained, as if pieces of you were quietly taken without your permission. You try to comfort them, guide them, support them, and each time you do, their hunger grows. They rely on your strength because they have not met their own. And the greatest danger is that awakened people often feel responsible for these individuals. You sense their pain, you sense their longing, you see their potential, but you must understand a crucial truth. You cannot carry someone who refuses to walk. And if you try, You don't lift them, you sink. The third person you must avoid is the one who cannot tolerate your silence. When you awaken, you begin to crave quiet, not the absence of sound, but the absence of noise. Noise from expectations, from drama, from the endless need to fill space with meaningless conversation. This person cannot handle that silence because silence exposes everything they are trying to hide. So they pull you into conversations that go nowhere, dramas that repeat endlessly, arguments that begin in emptiness and end in exhaustion. They interpret your stillness as rejection, your calm as disinterest, your clarity as coldness. But the truth is, you have simply outgrown the noise they still call connection. You cannot evolve in an environment that constantly demands your participation in unconsciousness. The fourth person is the most subtle and the most dangerous, the one who pretends to awaken with you, not out of genuine desire, but out of fear of losing you. They begin mimicking your language, your insights, your practices. They nod at all the right moments, speak the right words, adopt the right spiritual phrases, but underneath the performance lies insecurity, not awareness. You will notice something strange. They agree with everything you say, yet nothing in their life changes. They love the feeling of being close to awakened energy, but they do not want to face the discomfort required to awaken themselves. And this creates an imbalance because instead of walking beside you, they cling to you. Instead of growing with you, they hide behind you. And before long, you realize you are not uplifting them, they are anchoring you. But the fifth person is the one almost no awakened individual recognizes in time. The one who appears harmless, familiar, even comforting. This is the person who embodies your old self. They remind you of who you used to be, your old habits, your old fears, your old places of hiding. Being around them feels strangely nostalgic. A part of you remembers that version of yourself with tenderness. Another part feels the pull to slip back into that identity. This person unconsciously invites you to step backward, to shrink, to soften your awareness so they can feel comfortable again. Not out of malice, but out of familiarity. They represent the final test of awakening. Can you stay true to who you are becoming without betraying who you used to be? Now, you might wonder, must I avoid these people forever? No, not always. But you must avoid them until you are strong enough not to collapse back into the self you once were. Awakening is fragile in its early stages. Like a flame in the wind, easily extinguished by the slightest breath of the past. If you stay too close to the people who once required you to dim yourself, you may find yourself disappearing again into the dream you just escaped. And yet, here lies the true paradox. Awakening is not about abandoning others. It is about not abandoning yourself. You cannot save those who refuse to wake. You cannot light a path for someone still convinced they are not in the dark. Your task is not to pull others upward, it is to rise. And in rising, become a quiet invitation for those who are ready. Awakening is not the end of your connection to people. It is the beginning of your connection to truth. And sometimes, truth requires space. Sometimes it requires distance. Sometimes it requires letting go of the hands that no longer know how to hold you. When you awaken, you do not walk away from people, you walk away from the version of yourself who needed their approval to feel whole. And on the other side of that letting go, you will find others, people who see as you see, feel as you feel, move through the world with the same quiet awareness. They will not fear your transformation. They will not drain your energy. They will not resist your silence. They will not imitate your awakening. They will not pull you back into who you used to be. They will walk with you not because they need you, but because they recognize you. There comes a moment, sometime after the initial glow of awakening, where you begin to notice something unsettling, not in others, but in yourself. A shifting, a thinning, a quiet sense that the air around you has changed. The people who once felt like home no longer feel familiar. The conversations you once leaned into now feel like echoes in a room you've already walked out of. And just as the sun reveals the dust in a room, awakening reveals the invisible dynamics that have been shaping your relationships all along. This is why these 5 people become so dangerous, not because of who they are, but because of who you used to be with them. You see, awakening is not just a change in perception. It is a change in participation. Things you once tolerated begin to feel unbearable. Games you once played feel meaningless. Roles you once embodied feel like costumes that no longer fit. And yet, the people in your life haven't updated their script. They still interact with you as the version of yourself that used to exist. And this creates a kind of spiritual dissonance, a soft, persistent strain on your inner clarity. Let us go deeper into each of these 5, because their presence in your life will not always be obvious. Some will come in the form of comfort. Others will come disguised as love. One will even come wearing your own face. The first type, the one who fears your transformation, often shows up in the simplest, subtlest ways. You might notice their discomfort when you speak with more honesty. Their eyes shift, their shoulders tense, they change the subject. It is not your awakening they fear. It is the way your awakening illuminates parts of themselves they would rather keep in the dark. They fear what your clarity reveals, because awareness is contagious, and nothing terrifies the sleeping mind more than the possibility of waking up. You will hear it in small comments. You're overthinking. You're being dramatic. You're taking things too seriously. Or the quiet dagger disguised as affection. I just miss the old you. But the old you they miss is the version that made them comfortable. And your awakening has made comfort impossible for them. Their fear is not a sign for you to dim your light. It is a sign that you are no longer in a place that reflects who you are becoming. Now, the second type, the energy feeder, often does not realize what they are doing. They genuinely feel they need you. They come to you with every crisis, every confusion, every chaos. And because you're awakened, you can sense the truth beneath their words. You can feel their ache. You can feel the weight they carry. And at first, helping them feels natural. It feels compassionate. It feels like the right thing to do. But awakening comes with a dangerous gift. You become someone others feel safe around, too safe. They confess, they unload. They place their emotional burdens in your hands, trusting you will hold them. But without realizing it, they are asking you to carry what they have refused to face. And if you are not careful, you will drown in the emotional tides of people who do not know how to swim. Energy feeders don't always take, they sometimes cling. They grow dependent on your clarity, your presence, your stillness, and in their dependence, they pull you downward, back into the density you worked so hard to rise from. The old impulse within you might whisper, stay, help them, but wisdom speaks more softly and says, you cannot be the ground they stand on. They must learn to stand on their own. The third type, the one who cannot tolerate your silence, appears in almost every awakened person's life. These are the people who fill every empty moment with chatter. Noise is their shield. Noise is their comfort. Noise is how they avoid hearing themselves. When you awaken, silence becomes your sanctuary. You sit in quietness and it nourishes you. You breathe deeply and it steadies you. But to them, your silence feels like rejection. It is not that they dislike you, no. They dislike what your silence forces them to confront. You see, silence is not empty. Silence is revealing. And revealing is the last thing they want. So they pull you back into noise. They begin conversations that go nowhere. They revive old conflicts. They stir emotional dust just to keep you from sitting still. Their discomfort with your quietness is not about you. It is about the storm inside them that they've spent years trying to drown out with sound. Now, the fourth type, the imitator, is perhaps the most confusing. When you awaken, some people feel inspired by your insight. Others feel threatened. And a few feel afraid of losing you. Those are the ones who pretend. They don't want to awaken. They want the benefits of appearing awakened. They want to stay connected to you, but without changing themselves. So they mirror your behavior. They use the same words. They adopt the same ideas. They echo your thoughts back to you. But the difference is subtle and undeniable. Their words feel hollow. Their insights lack weight. Their presence feels performative. At first, you might feel flattered. It feels good to be understood. It feels good to be followed. But soon, you begin to sense the emptiness behind their imitation. It becomes clear that they are not walking beside you, they are hiding behind you. And the danger is not in their pretending. The danger is in the temptation to shrink yourself so they can continue clinging to you without ever confronting themselves. And then we come to the fifth person, the shadow of your former self. This one does not appear in human form. This one lives in your memory. Every awakened person reaches a point where the past calls to them not with suffering, but with familiarity. You remember who you were before all this, before the clarity, before the discomfort, before the truth broke. Open inside you, there is a deep, tender ache for the version of yourself who didn't know so much, who didn't feel so much, who didn't see so much. Your former self will whisper to you in the voices of old habits, old fears, old comforts. Come back, it says. You were happier when you didn't think so deeply. You were lighter when you didn't feel so much. You were safer when you stayed asleep. But the familiarity of the past is not a sign to return. It is a sign you are outgrowing what once held you. Awakening is not about becoming something new. It is about remembering what you always were beneath the layers you wore to survive. And yet, this shadow self, the memory of who you used to be, will try to reclaim you. Not because it's malicious, but because it represents a reality that no longer exists. You cannot return to a life you've awakened from. You cannot unsee what you now see. You cannot unknow what you now know. Awakening has already begun the process of reshaping you. To return would be to fracture yourself. To forward would be to become whole. When you learn to recognize these five people, these five reflections, you begin to understand that awakening is not something you do once. It is something you must guard, nurture, and tend to like a fragile flame in the early hours of dawn. There is a moment on the spiritual path where something subtle begins to shift inside you. Not a dramatic moment, not an explosion of insight, but a quiet knowing, a soft, steady recognition that you are no longer who you were. And yet, you are not fully who you are becoming. You're in the in-between, 1 foot in awakening, 1 foot in the world you once belonged to. And this in-between is where the real danger lies. Because the world you awakened from still has a claim on you, not through force, but through memory, not through chains, but through familiarity. And the people who were part of your old reality, those five types, they become bridges back into unconsciousness. They pull you with subtle gravity, not because they wish you harm, but because awakening threatens the stability of their world. Let's go deeper. The first type, the one who fears your transformation, begins to treat your growth as if it were a personal betrayal. They may not say it directly, but you will. feel it in the air between you, a tension, an uneasiness, a sadness almost. They sense that something within you has shifted and that this shift has changed the balance of your relationship. You will notice how conversations with them begin to feel tight, constricted, like trying to pour a river into a glass. Your expanded awareness doesn't fit into the old dynamic anymore. They keep trying to pull you into the old pattern, old jokes, old arguments, old emotional contracts. And for a moment, you might feel the temptation to step back into the version of yourself they still expect. You might even try. But something inside you hesitates, like slipping back into old clothing that no longer fits your body. It itches. It suffocates. It feels wrong. This is the first sign that you must distance yourself not out of abandonment, but out of self-preservation. The second type, the energy feeder, becomes more apparent as your awakening deepens. Your sensitivity to subtle frequencies heightens, and suddenly their emotional waves hit you harder than before. You feel their anxiety long before they speak a word. You sense their heaviness even when they smile. You pick up their chaos like an antenna receiving a signal. They begin to fixate on your presence because your awareness gives them temporary relief. They feel calm around you, grounded, seen. But this is where the danger lies. They begin to rely on you as their source of balance. And balance borrowed from another is not balance at all. It becomes a dependency disguised as connection. What makes this so difficult is that awakened individuals are natural healers. Your presence, your clarity, your listening, all of it becomes medicine to people who are drowning in their own minds. But medicine given to someone who refuses to heal themselves turns poisonous not to them, but to you. At first, you tell yourself, it's just one conversation. Then, they just need me for a little while. Eventually, they won't be okay without me. But the truth is harsher. As long as you keep rescuing them, they never learn to swim. And as long as you keep carrying them, you never learn to let go. The third type, the ones who can't handle your silence, are often the loudest people in your life. They are addicted to noise, not because they enjoy sound, but because silence terrifies them. Silence forces them to feel the emptiness they've been avoiding. Silence forces them to confront the questions they've buried. Silence forces them to face themselves. Your awakening threatens their avoidance. Your quietness disrupts their distractions. Your stillness unnerves their restlessness. So they try to fill your silence with noise. They text you constantly, pull you into unnecessary conversations, revive old stories just to escape the discomfort of quiet. They mistake your peace for distance, your stillness for coldness, your introspection for disinterest. But awakening teaches you something profound. Silence is not the absence of connection. Silence is the beginning of truth. This is why their presence becomes draining. They ask you to abandon silence in order to return to noise. They ask you to trade clarity for distraction. They ask you to amputate your awakening so they can feel comfortable again. But you cannot walk a spiritual path while carrying the weight of those who fear silence. And then comes the fourth type, the imitator. This one is the most deceptive. Not because they intend harm, but because they reflect your awakening back to you in a false way. They mimic your depth without understanding it. They imitate your language without embodying it. They mirror your insights without integrating them. Their presence creates a strange illusion. For a moment, you might believe you have found someone who understands you, someone who walks the same path, someone who sees the world the way you do. But the illusion breaks when life tests them. Awakening is not measured by words, it is measured by how you respond when the world becomes heavy. And you will notice the difference. Where you remain calm, they become reactive. Where you remain grounded, they become unstable. Where you move inward, they grasp outward. Their imitation becomes a mirror that reflects not their awakening, but their emptiness. And if you are not careful, you may begin shrinking yourself to maintain the illusion of connection. You may begin dumbing down your insights so they don't feel threatened. You may begin carrying them spiritually so they don't fall behind. But awakening cannot survive in an atmosphere where truth must shrink to be accepted. And then the final one, the person who embodies your past self. This is the person who represents who you were before you awakened your old habits, your old fears, your old identity. They bring out reflexes in you that you thought you had transcended. Around them, you sometimes feel the pull to become smaller, softer, less aware, not because they ask you to shrink, but because your old self remembers how easy it was to live asleep. There is a bittersweet comfort in unconsciousness. To not feel so deeply, to not see so clearly, to not carry the weight of awareness. This person is a living doorway to your past. And if you step through it, awakening becomes memory rather than embodiment. The real danger is not that they will pull you back, but that a part of you may want to go. In awakening, the world does not pull you backward out of malice. It pulls you backward out of familiarity. And you must be wise enough to recognize that comfort is not the same as alignment. You cannot remain awake by surrounding yourself with the people who fed your unconsciousness. Awakening requires a new ecosystem, a new environment, a new energetic reality. As awakening deepens, you begin to realize something quietly profound. Most of the struggle is not with the world outside you. It is with the echoes of who you used to be. The world tugs at those old echoes, old wounds, old patterns, trying to lure you back into the familiar. And the 5 types of people you must avoid after awakening are really 5 expressions of this gravitational pull. Each one represents a way you could slip back into the version of yourself that awakening has made too small for you to inhabit anymore. But before we go deeper into why these people can destabilize your awakening, you must understand something essential. Awakening is not a single moment. It is a process, a gradual peeling away of illusion, a continuous dissolving of old identities, and any process still unfolding is vulnerable, just as a seedling is vulnerable before its roots take hold, just as a butterfly is vulnerable in the chrysalis, just as a newborn must be handled with care. Your early awakening requires protection, not from danger in the physical sense, but from unconsciousness in the spiritual sense. Because consciousness, once awakened, does not automatically remain. It must be chosen. It must be nurtured. It must be defended. And this is why the people around you matter more than ever. Let's return to the first type, the one who fears your transformation. When you awaken, your relationship with truth changes. You no longer comply with emotional agreements that require dishonesty. You stop participating in conversations that revolve around pretending. You stop dimming yourself to maintain harmony. But for someone who built their relationship with you on the foundation of those old agreements, your awakening feels like a betrayal. They fear your transformation because it reflects a truth they are not ready to acknowledge. That they too are uncomfortable in their own lives, but unlike you, they are not ready to change. You become a mirror they cannot bear to look into. Your awakening exposes their stagnation. Your courage exposes their fear. Your clarity exposes their denial. And so they push back, not to harm you, but to protect themselves. This is the subtle danger. Not open hostility, but quiet resistance. The kind that happens through guilt, emotional pressure, or subtle withdrawal. The kind that pulls at your heart. The kind that tempts you to shrink just a little, just enough to ease their discomfort. But each time you shrink yourself, you dim your awakening. Each time you choose their comfort over your consciousness, you return to the dream. This is why distance becomes necessary, not to punish them, but to preserve you. The second type, the energy feeder, becomes more draining the more awakened you become. For awakened individuals, the boundary between self and other becomes thin. You feel the emotions of others as if they were your own. You pick up unspoken tensions, hidden pain, and unresolved chaos. And without realizing it, you become the emotional container for the people around you. But this is where the trap lies. Awakened people often confuse empathy with responsibility. Feeling someone's pain does not make you responsible for healing it. Sensing someone's suffering does not make you obligated to save them. Understanding someone's wounds does not mean you must carry their weight. Energy feeders thrive not because they are malicious, but because awakened people overextend. They give too much, too often, for too long. And the cost is subtle at first. Exhaustion, emotional heaviness, a feeling of being drained without knowing why. But eventually the cost becomes far greater. You lose contact with your own center. Awakening requires grounding, it requires solitude, it requires stillness. And energy feeders disrupt all three. They pull you into emotional storms that aren't yours. They entangle you in problems you never created. They drain your clarity with their chaos. And the danger is not that they consume you, it's that they distract you from your path. Because awakening demands presence, and energy feeders pull you out of the present into their endless cycles of crisis. To stay awake, you must learn to differentiate empathy from entanglement. You can feel for someone without carrying them. You can care without collapsing. The third type, the one who cannot tolerate your silence, is the embodiment of unconscious distraction. Unawakened minds rely on noise because noise prevents introspection. You may notice how they rush to fill every moment with commentary, how they cling to shallow conversations, how they fear space, depth, and quiet. When you awaken, silence becomes sacred. It becomes the place where truth reveals itself. It becomes the space where your intuition whispers. It becomes the environment where your spirit breathes. And anyone who disrupts your silence disrupts your awakening. These individuals do not want you to be quiet because your silence confronts them with their own emptiness. They fear that if you stop speaking, they might have to start listening to themselves, to their own discomfort, to the hollowness they've been avoiding. So they keep you busy, busy talking, busy reacting, busy engaging, busy being pulled away from yourself. Awakening requires the courage to sit with silence. Unawakened people require the distraction that silence dissolves. The fourth type, the imitator, poses a very different danger. Unlike the energy feeder, they do not drain you emotionally. Unlike the fearful one, they do not resist your awakening. Unlike the noisemaker, they do not pull you out of silence. Their danger is subtle, almost invisible. They create the illusion of companionship without the foundation of consciousness. They repeat your insights, but their energy does not change. They echo your words, but their inner world remains untouched. They nod at your truths, but make no effort to embody their own. The danger is not their imitation, it is the temptation for you to slow your growth so they can keep up. Awakening demands authenticity, not performance. And the imitator creates a false sense of spiritual companionship that can anchor you in stagnation. Then finally, the fifth type, the one who embodies your old self, represents the last obstacle you must transcend. Awakening often comes with a strange nostalgia, a longing for simplicity, a yearning for the days when life felt less intense, less heavy, less demanding. You remember the comfort of ignorance. You remember the ease of not seeing so much. You remember the gentleness of not feeling so deeply. Your old self whispers to you in the voice of comfort, you don't have to change. You were fine before. Let go of this awakening, it's too heavy. You don't need this new depth. But awakening is irreversible. Once consciousness expands, it cannot shrink without fracturing. The past cannot hold the awakened soul, and any attempt to return to who you once were becomes a form of self-abandonment. These 5 people become reflections of the 5 doors back into unconsciousness. Avoiding them is not rejection, it is protection. It is honoring the fragility of the emerging self. It is choosing truth over comfort, awareness over familiarity, consciousness over memory. As awakening settles deeper into your being, you begin to notice something you weren't prepared for, an internal shift that feels both liberating and unsettling. You start to sense that you are no longer shaped by the world around you. Instead, the world is shaped by the state of your awareness. What once influenced you now washes through you. What once disturbed you now becomes information rather than identity. What once controlled you now dissolves in the clarity of seeing. And yet, despite this newfound inner stability, there is an undeniable truth. You are still vulnerable to the gravitational pull of your former patterns. This is why the 5 people you must avoid after awakening are not obstacles on your path. They are echoes of the world you are no longer part of. They represent the energy you have risen from, the frequencies you have transcended, the versions of yourself that awakening has made obsolete. They do not pull you back because they are powerful, they pull you back because they are familiar. Let us go deeper into this familiarity, because it is the true tether that binds awakened people to their old lives. Consider the first type again, the one who fears your transformation. Their fear is not about you. It is about what your awakening reflects back to them. Your presence alone becomes a silent revelation. They see in you a courage they have not accessed. They see in you a willingness to confront truth they have avoided. They see in you the shedding of illusions they still cling to. This is why their fear feels personal. It is not your awakening they fear. It is their own awakening. To walk with them after your transformation is to walk with someone who constantly pulls you into the smaller version of yourself they once knew. You cannot rise while remaining loyal to someone who fears heights. Growth becomes betrayal in their eyes, and your awakening becomes a threat rather than an inspiration. The second type, the energy feeder, becomes progressively more draining the more you evolve. Before awakening, you might have offered your energy freely, unaware of the cost. But now, your awareness turns every interaction into an immediate reflection of energetic imbalance. You feel their need before they speak it. You sense their turmoil as if it were your own. You pick up their emotional currents like a tuning fork vibrating to a discordant frequency. And once you sense it, you can no longer ignore it. Energy feeders do not grow. They orbit. And they orbit awakened individuals because awakened individuals inadvertently offer what they are missing: emotional regulation, grounding, clarity, and presence. But the danger lies in the unconscious expectation they place upon you. They want you to continue being their anchor, their therapist, their savior, their emotional generator. What they do not realize is that awakening is not an endless supply of energy. It is the removal of energy drains. To stay awake, you must choose environments that honor your inner equilibrium. And energy feeders destabilize that equilibrium simply by expecting more of you than they give of themselves. The third type, the one who cannot handle your silence, represents the collective unconscious in its purest form. These are the people who are terrified of stopping, terrified of reflection, terrified of hearing their own thoughts. When you awaken, silence becomes your sanctuary, because silence is where consciousness expands. But to them, silence is a mirror they cannot face. So they fill every space with noise, words, drama, gossip, stimulation, distraction. And if you spend too much time in their presence, you may find yourself slowly pulled back into that unconscious rhythm. Not because you choose it, but because you are surrounded by its momentum. Silence is fragile. in environments that depend on noise. Your clarity is fragile in environments that depend on confusion. Your awareness is fragile in environments that depend on distraction. The fourth type, the imitator, is one of the most spiritually deceptive. They make you feel seen, understood, and supported, but only in a superficial sense. They mimic your awakening, but not out of sincerity, out of fear of losing you. They adapt your language, your beliefs, your insights, but they do not change their being. Their imitation creates a false sense of connection, a mirage that feels like companionship but lacks the depth of genuine resonance. They become an emotional placeholder, not a true companion. And if you are not careful, you may begin lowering your spiritual standards to maintain that illusion of unity. Their presence slowly traps you in a cycle of shallow reflection, one where you speak deeply, but nothing deep actually happens. Their imitation distracts you from the truth that awakening cannot be shared through mimicry. It can only be shared through embodied transformation. And now we come again to the fifth type, the one who represents your old self. This is the most intimate danger because it does not appear as another person, but through someone who brings out the parts of you that awakening has begun to shed. They remind you of the ease of unconscious living. They remind you of the comfort of avoidance. They remind you of the softness of fitting in rather than standing out. With them, you feel the subtle pull to shrink your awareness, so conversations don't feel heavy. You feel the temptation to disconnect from your intuition, so you don't seem too introspective. You feel the urge to lower your frequency, so they don't feel uncomfortable. But this is the quiet poison of familiarity. It convinces you that returning to unconsciousness is harmless. Yet something inside you knows returning would mean abandoning yourself. Shrinking would mean silencing your soul. Pretending would mean betraying your truth. The fifth type is the shadow of your past patterns, speaking through the present. And just like any shadow, it clings not because of power, but because of habit. Awakening asks you to break that habit, to step beyond nostalgia, to honor the direction your soul is pulling you. These five people, fearful, draining, noisy, imitative, nostalgic, each represent a facet of unconsciousness. And your awakening becomes stronger or weaker, depending on which environments you allow yourself to remain in. But here is the deeper truth most people never understand. These five people do not disappear because you avoid them. They disappear because you outgrow them. When your frequency rises, their patterns can no longer attach to you. When your awareness sharpens, their distractions no longer seduce you. When your inner truth stabilizes, their fears no longer influence you. When your authenticity deepens, their imitations no longer matter. When your identity evolves, your old self no longer has a doorway back in. Avoiding these people is not about exile or rejection. It is about resonance. And resonance is what shapes your spiritual reality after awakening. There comes a point in awakening where something remarkable happens, a kind of internal pivot. At first, you avoid these five types of people because they destabilize you. Their energy drains you. Their patterns confuse you. Their presence pulls you back into the old version of yourself. But as awakening deepens, something profound shifts. You no longer avoid them out of fear. You avoid them out of clarity. Avoidance transforms from self-protection into alignment. It becomes a quiet, effortless movement like a plant bending towards sunlight, not because darkness threatens it, but because light nourishes it. Your consciousness begins to choose for you, gently, instinctively. And here is the quiet miracle. As your inner world changes, your relationships rearrange themselves without you forcing anything. People drift away not because you pushed them, but because your energy no longer anchors them. Some become uncomfortable around your presence. Others lose the access they once had to your emotions. Some stop reaching out. Others remain, but only at the edges of your life. Awakening is not something you perform. It is something that begins rewriting your reality from the inside out. Now, let's go deeper into the inner transformation that makes avoiding these 5 people no longer painful, but natural. The one who feared your transformation eventually stops being a temptation. You begin to see their fear not as rejection, but as limitation. Their discomfort no longer feels personal. You understand that their resistance was simply a sign of where their consciousness ends and yours begins. You stop trying to explain yourself. You stop trying to convince. You stop trying to make your awakening digestible to them. Awakening frees you from the need to be understood. And in that freedom, you realize something liberating. Those who fear your growth will never feel safe around someone who refuses to stay the same. You don't avoid them because they are wrong. You avoid them because you have outgrown the version of you that made the relationship possible. Then there is the energy feeder. Once upon a time, their presence may have exhausted you. Their emotional storms, their chaos, their dependence, it all felt heavy. But awakening changes how you relate to energy itself. You begin to see that your clarity is precious, your peace is sacred, your emotional capacity is not infinite. There is a moment where you stop letting people consume your inner resources simply because they are hungry. You stop bleeding emotionally for people who will not heal themselves. You stop confusing compassion with self-sacrifice. Awakening teaches you a truth most people never realize. You cannot save those who insist on suffering. You cannot carry those who refuse to stand. And you cannot protect those who use your presence as a shield from their own evolution. Your energy becomes a garden, one you must tend, not one you must burn to keep others warm. Then comes the one who cannot handle your silence. Once, their need for noise may have overwhelmed you. Their constant talking, their constant drama, their constant distractions. But after awakening matures, silence becomes your natural state. Peace becomes your home. Stillness becomes your baseline. And the person who fears silence begins to fade from your life, not because you push them away, but because your inner quiet is incompatible with their inner chaos. Your silence no longer bends to fill their discomfort. Your presence no longer shrinks to avoid confrontation. Your peace no longer apologizes for its existence. You avoid them because your soul no longer tolerates environments where noise is a survival mechanism. Then we approach the imitator, the one who mirrors your awakening without embodying it. As your consciousness stabilizes, imitation no longer flatters you. It begins to feel hollow, empty. Energy without essence, words without being, and you start to sense something important. You cannot walk with someone whose awakening is a performance. Imitation is a shadow of connection, not connection itself. You stop lowering your frequency so they can feel equal to you. You stop slowing your growth so they don't feel left behind. You stop mistaking flattery for resonance. You avoid them because the path of awakening demands authenticity, not reflection. And then finally you reach the deepest test, the person who embodies your old self. This test is not about them, it is about you. They awaken the nostalgic ache for the version of you that life felt easier in, not deeper, not truer, just easier. They remind you of the comfort of not knowing, not feeling, not growing. But the more your awakening matures, the more you realize that ease was an illusion. Your old life was easier only because you were asleep. And gradually, something powerful happens. The emotional pull of your old self weakens. The nostalgic longing loses its flavor. The past loses its gravity. Not because you reject who you were, but because you finally integrate who you were. Awakening does not ask you to hate your past self. It asks you to outgrow it, to honor it, to thank it, and then to walk beyond it. The person who triggers your old patterns eventually becomes a gentle reminder of how far you've come, not a doorway back into who you used to be. And this leads us to one of the most important realizations of the awakened path. Avoidance is not abandonment, it is elevation. When you avoid these 5 people, you are not running away from them. You are running toward yourself, toward your truth, toward your expansion, toward the reality your soul is trying to step into. Avoidance is not rejection, it is resonance, choosing its own. Your frequency determines your company. Your clarity determines your boundaries. Your awakening determines your relationships. And soon, something beautiful happens. Your life begins to refill with people who match your new vibration. People who are not threatened by your transformation. People who carry their own energy, not yours. People who honor silence. People who awaken themselves rather than imitate. People who walk beside you, not behind you, not ahead of you, beside you. These are the ones who will meet you where you are. These are the ones who will see you, not the version of you that once served them. These are the ones who recognize your evolution because they are evolving too. And when you meet them, you will understand why avoiding the 5 was necessary. You emptied your life so it could be refilled with truth. You released what was heavy so you could rise. You let go of the past so the future could find you. Awakening is not about being alone. It is about being aligned. Avoiding certain people after awakening is not an act of separation, it is an act of devotion. A devotion to your consciousness. A devotion to your evolution. A devotion to the truth emerging inside you. And in this devotion, you realize the greatest secret. You never lose people during awakening. You only lose illusions. The ones who remain are the ones meant to walk the awakened path with you, not because they need your light, but because they carry light of their own.